So thank you so much for coming, and welcome to Launch Stories. Yes. We're all about connecting and educating Chilliwack's entrepreneurs. So that's our mission statement. That's what we're up to. And I'd really like to thank our sponsors for helping make this happen. We've got the Chilliwack Economic Partners, Chilliwack Innovation Network, and the UFV, the University of the Fraser Valley. Let's hear it for our sponsors. And thanks for our partners for doing the heavy lifting and getting this done on a monthly basis, Cohort Chilliwack, Currency Marketing, and Wisebox. And special thanks to Elise McAlpine for running all of the AV. And you can see her in her spot here. This is her first go, and she's already nailing it. So we've figured out a message to get my attention. If something's wrong, I'll go running that way. But I think we've got it well in hand. So I'm thrilled to introduce you to our guest tonight. I know you've been chatting with Nick. I've known him for a number of years, and I think this is going to be a great conversation. So please give a warm Launch Stories welcome to Nick Adams, the Managing Director of Dieselmatic Digital. Come on up, Nick.
Thanks, Tim.
And he came equipped. I did not.
Yes. Always.
So let's start at the beginning. I believe you were born and raised in Chilliwack. Is that true?
I was born actually in Mission, but we moved to Chilliwack when I was 7 or 8 years old. Yeah. So I've been here for a while.
And I'm trying to peg you. I think you're around 30-ish.
Around 30-ish, yeah.
Around 30-ish,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So did you go to high school in Chilliwack?
Yeah, I went to Sardis.
And where did you get the bug for design and writing and all things that you're into now?
Man. Who knows? That's a tough one. I think I got it from my university experience. So I went to University of British Columbia, and when I was there, I started writing for the Ubyssey, their student newspaper, and I really noticed that there were a lot of writers who would put a lot of time and effort into a story, and it just wouldn't really get the attention that it deserved on the page or online, and it would fall short because of that. And so I started to get into design. I knew that if you presented a story a little bit differently and showed it in a way that, kind of articulated it through more than just the words on the page, you could pique someone's interest and bring them into it, and then they would get to experience that story. So I think that's probably where I first kind of dipped my toes into design. I mean, I would say going even further back, it was probably pirating Photoshop in grade 8 and learning how to mess with my friends' photos.
Because I find it interesting. You're a great designer from what I've seen and all the work you produce, but that was not your focus. You went to UBC for
English literature. Yeah.
As all tech entrepreneurs do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was also looking it up, and you said Ubyssey. It's the Ubyssey.
Ubyssey, yeah.
It's not UBC. It's actually spelled UBY.
SSE, like Odyssey, but Ubyssey.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so it was really that grind. And you mentioned that there's 2 issues a week, every semester, with a full course load being on this editorial design team.
Going into publishing of any kind is a trial by fire industry. Like especially in print. I mean, print isn't a thriving industry anymore, but man, it is, you're working a full course load and a full-time job where you're going to print twice a week, and it's a grind, right? And especially from a design perspective, you are constantly twice a week having to, that thing that I said I loved in the beginning, trying to find a story or learn how to articulate it and present it in a really creative and unique way. You then have to do that twice a week on top of.
Did you do this from
courses.
year 1 to year 4?
No, I did it. So the way that the Ubyssey works is you typically hold a position for a year. They're paid positions. Not paid well as any university position, but you hold them for a year, and then you kind of get to pass the torch to somebody else. So I was a contributor for the first year, and then I did my position, and then I graduated. I didn't want to keep doing university, so I condensed my courses into a lot, and graduated a little bit early, and then moved on.
Got it.
Yeah.
So coming out of there, did you go to the boardroom?
Yeah.
Directly out of university as a designer, correct?
Yeah, so I actually I have a weird trajectory with them too. So I actually started at the boardroom as their wakeboard and surf instructor as a summer job when I was at Ubyssey, which was just awful, just terrible job. So my summer that year consisted of taking the staff out and teaching them about the product, right? Teaching them how to actually use it, because for the most part, the staff are skateboarders and snowboarders. And I mean, boating in general, it's not a lot of people have access to a wakeboard boat, right? So you don't have the ability to learn these products. So I started out with them, got really lucky, just got hooked up with some really great people. Murray Fraser, the owner, gave me a shot, and it ended up being really great. I ended up working there for a season as like a staff member afterwards, and then their graphic designer position opened up. And with my work at the Ubyssey and everything, it all just came together. And so I kind of overlapped and worked there during my university time, and then transitioned post-university to Herschel Supply Company, and worked as a designer there.
And as a designer, was this primarily print, or was there a digital component to it as well?
Boardroom was a mix of both. So yeah, I mean, being Murray is a pretty old school dude, so he loves advertising in newspapers, which is really frustrating. But I wish I would have known then what I know now. Doing things like using call tracking numbers in a newspaper ad allows you to, figure out if anybody's actually calling the number in the newspaper. We never did that. It was just, kind of the route that he'd always taken. So yeah, it was a mix of print and digital, and it kind of transitioned. My roles definitely transitioned more from print to digital over those years.
So Herschel's a pretty going concern, right? It's a big company. And what was your entry into that business, and what was your role there?
Yeah. So again, I mean, it is amazing how, the connections that you have, a connection from the boardroom was the one that got me the interview. And then, Michelle Galt, who's the director of product at the time, was the one who interviewed me and hired me. It was really interesting to be a part of the company for that time, because there was a lot of growth. Going from a startup to a more established company where they were, I think probably around 50 when I joined, and then over 100, kind of within a year or two after that. So a lot of growth in a short period of time, and really interesting to see how a company grows like that. The roles shift and evolve. They become more defined by nature, more hats on less people, or less hats on more people, and
right.
More defined roles.
And then I believe you decided to move out to the Valley again, and at that point, start your own business.
Yeah. So at that point, I realized that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I knew, I think I was just 26 at that time, and I knew that I would either be 30. I thought that when I was 30, I would be ready, right? I'll have enough experience. I'll be able to. That's a good time to do it. And I thought, well, I can either, I'm going to turn 30 one day anyway, so I can either do it with no entrepreneurial experience, or I can do it with 4 or 5 years of entrepreneurial experience.
Now, did you have entrepreneurial mentors growing up? Did you come from a business family at all, or?
No, not my family. My family was all very solid jobs, really good jobs.
But you had that English literature degree. You're just set, right?
Exactly, right? Well, it's funny. The way that I see arts degrees as a whole is much more foundational. Like, people mistake arts degrees for being technical degrees. You're not taking an English literature degree to learn how to analyze Chaucer for some kind of like commercial purpose in our modern world. Like, if you're looking for that job, you're not getting it. And so, the foundation of an arts degree teaches you how to be analytical, how to look at problems or look at stories and, analyze them in ways that, maybe nobody has before. And so that's the way that I really see the foundation of an arts degree in general. But
That's interesting, because that dovetails with the design degree, really. The same kind of principles, right? You learn to solve problems.
Yeah. I guess the one entrepreneurial influence that I can think of is John Raby, who owned Redline Watersports in Chilliwack. I worked for him as a teenager. Tim designed his first logo.
That's right.
For the company.
It's all full circle.
Yeah. And I really, I liked John a lot. He's still a great mentor today. Crazy. Sorry, it's coming up on like 15, 20 years that we've known each other now, which is wild how you just get older. But he told me when I was kind of in a transitionary period of, going from high school to university and figuring out what I wanted to do. His degree was in theology. And, I asked him, how does that translate? How do you go from a degree in theology to a business owner? And he told me that business is just creative problem solving. And that's a really enticing and attractive, quality for me. I really like the creative problem solving. And within most roles that I had, jobs previously, creative problem solving was quite limited. And, eventually you would solve all the problems of your job. And then you either are bored or, shouldn't have a job anymore because you kind of solved it.
So your design firm was known as a very good creative company.
Yeah.
And I believe it was inspired by Parks and Rec. Is that correct?
It was, yeah.
Nick Offerman.
Yeah. Yeah, very good.
Tell me that story.
Very good construction. Well, that was, I think something that I learned, which really influenced Dieselmatic as well, that I learned through the early entrepreneurial experience of creating very good creative, it was that spending time on naming a company it can be a big waste. It's obviously a really important part, but I deliberated for a long time, probably months of trying to figure out what to call this thing. And one night, my now wife, then girlfriend, and I were watching Parks and Rec, and we're getting near the end, and Ron Swanson creates very good construction, and I'm like, okay, fuck it, very good creative. This is it.
Perfect. And as you can see, it was a diversity of clients, and that's typically how a design firm starts. And you had some areas of specialty. I think you had some that came out of the action sports and other like real estate and so forth. And if I recall, I was looking back, I did a Creative Third Thursday talk on my journey in creating a specialized design firm. And I've always had just blank stares, like to a designer or someone saying, I'm going to specialize. It seems like the most boring thing possible. But I remember you were just almost attacked me and just started asking me question after question after question. And through that, you started, I think, so that was around 2018. And then you started a sideline called Dieselmatic that grew out of a diesel repair shop client.
Yeah.
Is that how that stuff happened?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to that talk that you gave, because that was pretty fundamental. So some of the things that you talked about that really stuck out were there was a story that you had of pitching a client, and I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but it was something you pitched a client, a prospect, and it was something like your guys' budget was 60,000, and a competitor pitched, and they were specialists in the industry, and their pitch was 200,000 or something like that, quite a bit more, and they won.
Yeah.
Way more money, similar kind of proposal. The RFP is there. You guys are both doing the same thing, but because they had a track record in the industry, the risk for the customer was so much lower, and they won. And that was something that really, really stuck with me, and I found interesting. And some of the things that I talk about a lot now, that during that time, one of the things that I think is really important within entrepreneurship is having foundational and fundamental personal principles and goals. So one of mine is that I really, really wanted to give people good jobs that they love to do, and that they could do hopefully the best work of their career at. In order to do that in a marketing agency, you need to be able to have a thriving, growing company. Having a diversity of clients does not allow you to do that. There's too much of a divergence between the creative process and budget, right? The creative process that is required for each new client in each new industry exceeds that of the client's budget almost every time, right? So another thing that you said in there is that agencies almost always live and die with their owner, right? They're not sellable companies that that provide long-term solutions to a market. And so those were some of the things that were foundational to that transition. So during that talk, one of the things that I put up my hand at the end and cornered you with was asking about how you do it, like how you go about finding that niche, right? Being something that so many people try to do, right? Like, it's finding a problem to solve is one of the hardest things within entrepreneurship. And I think your answer at the time was something along the lines of like it kind of happened organically for you, right?
Yeah, I think designers in general, there's an ego involved, and they would prefer to speak at an Adobe conference amongst their peers than to a group of an industry, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's very curious that you went from more, I would say, glamorous kind of industries you were working in, what on the surface might be more exciting work, to I'm going to specialize in diesel repair shops. Yeah. Like it's kind of bizarre in a sense, but how did that come to be? Because you were searching for what is my specialty going to be? Yeah. So I think three criteria that I had during that process of looking for a market and an industry that would work for these things. So one would be finding a market in need, right, where there's a gap, which is what every entrepreneur wants to do. Easier said than done. Second is that you want to make sure that the customers have a high enough average customer value, and that they're used to signing big checks. Really, they're comfortable with cash flow. It's a stable industry. Those things are all really important. And then the third thing that I think was probably the most important, which touches on your point of doing very fun, cool, creative work, was that I wanted to find something that was unsexy, something that people hadn't really gotten a hold of, and that designers didn't really care about, right? And
man, is that true for the diesel commercial truck repair industry? It is a dumpster fire of design and marketing. So yeah, that was kind of the transition. And I'd say the other big thing with that is that I had my first child in that time, and that kind of changes your perspective as well. Like, I wanted to make sure that I was building something that would be able to provide for my family and set us on a good long-term course.
So I think a number of things you did really well. Do you got to be somewhere? You checking your watch? We got lots of time.
Apple Watches are just like, it's buzzing all the time, and
there's a big
I should have changed it.
there.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Hurry up, Tim. Oh my God. You know I'm a busy guy.
All that to say, you, I think, really approached this very intelligently. You didn't say, okay, I'm going to just tell all of my clients I'm firing them and I'm just going to put this shingle out. You started this as a secondary brand. You incorporated it as a second company.
Yeah.
And you had a client that you saw a need. You could solve that need. And homework for everybody here is, and I could have taken a ton of screen captures from Nick's website, but dieselmatic.com is top notch. It is so compelling that I almost started a diesel repair shop because I wanted to hire you guys. But it speaks to when you know the problem you're solving, the client profile, the persona, whatever, it's speaking to that person that's trying to keep their bays full of jobs and so forth. And it's super compelling. So none of you are involved in the diesel repair shop industry, but apply what he's done here. It's not a generalist firm by any means, and it really speaks to it. I noticed you had this repair shop owner quiz recently, and I thought it was just really smart the way you stepped. I almost spilled that out because I wanted to see what was behind there. But well done on the website and just building this brand. And Dieselmatic, it's got that same kind of very good creative vibe. Yeah. It's somewhat retro, somewhat Jetsons.
I guess trend, they're taking it back to the naming of Very Good Creative. I named, branded, and built the Dieselmatic brand and website in like 3 or 4 days.
Like once you tap into something, it just just came out, right?
I saw there's a guy, his name's Kevin Gordon. He started a company called Convertis, based out of Vancouver, and they provided a very similar solution for the automotive dealerships, and they got acquired by what is the company that you go to like find cars? Is it dealer.com? I think that's one of them, or
not sure, but there's a few of them.
Yeah, one of those big ones. They got acquired by them, and I became really enthralled with how he built that business and kind of the path that he took, and I realized that this is the path that I want to take within this industry that I found. And I branded and built the whole thing within a few days.
And dieselmatic.com, was that available? Did you have to? Wow, that's amazing. So that's a very short URL, very memorable. A typical designer would not say Dieselmatic. They would say Companymatic is a digital marketing solution built for all sorts of companies that are really cool. Schedule a call with us to learn more today, right? But that disqualifies more potential than but it speaks to someone. Yeah. And so this is some of the examples of the websites you've built for just a whole slew of diesel repair shops. So you hung this shingle out, you had the one. How quickly did they start finding you, or you finding them?
Yeah, rolling in. Man, so one of the things that you touched on was the transitionary period. So something that I found with a lot of entrepreneurs is that people think that entrepreneurs are these like risky individuals who are just throwing everything into the bucket, and I think that most successful entrepreneurs are some of the most risk averse people that you'll ever meet, right? You want to make sure that the risks that you're taking are certainly going to pay off. That's why you're taking them, right? You're not taking them to lose all your money. So what I did during that period of starting Dieselmatic was that I kept very good creative running with the clients that I had, and then continued growing Dieselmatic. It's very similar to somebody keeping a job, right, and building another company. I was just the boss of both of them, and so it was definitely slower at first, figuring out messaging, really truly learning more about the industry, truly becoming a specialist in it. I would say our growth path from within the first year. Funny, Joe and I were talking earlier. We like doubling things. Basically, we just doubled year over year, and gonna keep doing that hopefully. And so the first year, doubled, which is easy to do. Anyone can double in the first year.
So when did you actually start Dieselmatic?
I started Dieselmatic in June of 2020, incorporated in June of 2020.
Perfect timing. Global pandemic.
Perfect. Yeah, a couple months post.
But you were saying that it was actually, from a diesel repair shop standpoint, they're booming. Supply chain issues, like they've got to keep experienced gear on the road and so forth. And so, and you're completely a virtual shop. You have an office here at Cowork Chilliwack, but you've now grown to 15 employees. I was asking you before.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of people in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and so with that dramatic growth, talk to me about, like, how did you hire all of these people?
Yeah. Oh, man. I love the hiring process. The foundations of entrepreneurship, like I said, having the goals of wanting to give people good jobs that they love to do. It's important if you actually want to invest in people and grow people. The hiring process, I knew COVID made remote work much, much easier. But I knew previously that I wanted to grow a company remotely. And so I got really lucky I got very lucky in a lot of ways, but I got very lucky getting connected with a guy named Ross Mawini. He was the CEO of a company called Lobster Marketing, who was in a niche, pest control, and basically built the company that I wanted to build. And he told me something that was completely antithetical to all of the advice that I'd ever heard from anyone in entrepreneurship. And he said to have your first hire be a salesperson. Every other advice that I had ever heard was that, you as the owner and the CEO, your product, you need to be the salesperson because no one is going to do it as well as you. And his argument was that, I had gone through this process of, I believed that I should know how to do every single role in the company, right? I should know how to design a website, code it, run our marketing programs, sell the product, do our finance, HR, all of that. And so I became well versed in all of it, and that advice of hiring a salesperson as your first hire was crazy. But I really liked him, and he had done what I wanted to do, and so I took the advice. And I think within the 3 months after I hired that salesperson, Tracy, who she's now been with us for about a year and a half. Within that period we doubled, and that was pretty substantial, which then allowed me to hire somebody else, and that hiring process for the first year and a half, completely bootstrapped. So I only ever ran a profitable company. I'm very risk-averse entrepreneur.
So walk us through, someone signs up for a demo. What are you selling them? Like, what does a diesel repair shop buy from Dieselmatic?
Yeah. So this I think might have been something that you talked about as well, and that we talk about a lot, is that people really like threes. So having three options when you're buying, I mean, everyone has seen the, three, with the middle one being most popular. And I knew that service-based companies fall apart with too many a la carte options, right? It takes the agency, or me in that case, out of the seat of being the person in authority or control, and gives it to the client, which is bad. They are not the expert, right? They are good at fixing trucks. They're not good at building websites and marketing their shop. I am good at that. And so productizing a service like I did, and like you have done and many other people have done, allows you to tell the shops what they need at their certain growth stages, right? So we have 3 plans that essentially fit a shop at any revenue point that they're at. And those are all things that, I mean, they're constantly evolving and changing, but each one has all of the pieces that are necessary for that stage of growth, at a price point that, hopefully they can afford. So having that productized service model is it is the most important part within a service-based company. Otherwise,
so once somebody signs up for a demo and they go through, your kill rate's probably pretty high.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're on a monthly program, and you just keep going with that. And this caught the eye of a software company in the industry called Fullbay, as your shirt says. And I know that they reached out to you very early, and you kind of pushed back, but then they kept pursuing you. And tell me the story of this relationship, partnership, and ultimately acquisition.
Yeah. So we had a customer who used Fullbay, and we wanted to build some reputation management API integrations. So big words. Basically, it is automating the review process for customers. So a shop has a customer come in and get a service done. We use that software to pull information and then talk to their customer and say, hey, give us a review. And so that's how the conversation got started. And they just liked what we were doing. I mean, at that point, what I was doing.
I think you've always been good at saying we, even though for a while there, it was you, right?
Yeah, definitely. It feels inauthentic when you're just a single person, but yeah.
The royal we.
The royal we.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that, you kind of pushed them off for a bit, but they kept coming back. And ultimately, I think approximately a year later.
Yeah. So we continued on conversations and just kind of stayed in touch. I knew that at the point that we were at within our growth, any conversation that we had about acquisition, merger, partnership, there's just not a track record and not enough of a history to put anything forward that would be, even somewhat enticing. And so, I really focused on just keeping that relationship alive, and building a company to a point that it made sense to start talking a little bit more. Yeah.
Like, you've got a lot of tech you're using in your solutions, but you haven't necessarily built any software, or like many, it's duct tape and this service talking to that service. And was that an issue? Were they looking for more of the tech, or were they just looking for the growth rate, like the acquisition rate? And we don't have to get into specific numbers. I know you drove up in a gold-plated Model S plaid Tesla, but we won't get into that. I know that the details
just to be clear, I drove a 2012 Subaru Forester. One of the most interesting things, and I've got so much like confidential information that I wish
Sure.
I could share. But you would be amazed at how many enterprise level, $2 billion plus market cap companies there are out there who white label software. It is an industry standard, really. And if you white label it well and you're providing a solution to a customer, who cares? Right? You've packaged the things, you've done the heavy lifting of figuring out what, if somebody came to me and provided me with a solution of all of these things pieced together that they know and they have proven helps my business grow revenue, why am I going to say no? Right. So yeah, the white labeling of products, building, I mean, there were like more of the investment, and the IP is on the process side of things, the strategy and the process, web design and development, and any creative work really requires good, solid processes. And that's one of the hard parts about not being in a niche market. You have to change processes all the time because, they don't quite fit every industry. So we've been able to put together really, really strong processes that, over time, maybe it's a task time of 6 hours that it takes to do something. You get it down to 3, and now we're down to 20, 30 minutes to do that task because we built out templates and systems and automations, and that's where you can really start thriving, and there's a lot of fun. But yeah, not a huge concern from their side with kind of the way that it was built.
And you had talked to me along the way that this might be happening, and you've got some guidance, Nick, and you're talking to the right people, because it did seem a little too good to be true, honestly, but it seemed to progress. And then ultimately, on April 6th of this year, Dieselmatic was acquired by Fullbay. And so we're now April, May, June, July, August, like 4 or 5 months into it. How's it going?
Great, man. I mean, it's not without its ups and downs. The funny part of that is that it's funny that we have April 6th is the date that we announced it. I was telling some of the people before, the acquisition finalized and went through on April 1st. Which
Really?
felt rough. Yeah. And so yeah, since then, I mean, it's, I don't think that it's an opportunity and an experience that many people have, for 2 reasons. Our acquirer, the company, is just really great people. It was really great timing. Their CEO and founder has like 8 kids and wanted to go spend some more time with them. So he's now the executive chairman. They brought in a new CEO, who was the CEO to Lobster Marketing.
Okay.
The guy that I got matched up with early on. He was the CEO to the software company that acquired them. And so really just like really strong industry connections, and just our visions and goals and, styles aligned really well.
So one of the reasons many people become an entrepreneur is that they do not want a job. But then the ultimate goal is to be acquired, and then all of a sudden they've got a job. Do you feel like you're now an employee, or do you still have some autonomy to be that entrepreneur?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that we kind of touched on earlier was that you want to have challenges, right? And be in control of making sure that you still have challenges. And I have that, right? Like I mean, our CEO, he can't code, right? He's a fantastic leader. But he trusts me to develop the process and develop and build the company. And that was something that we talked about early on, that, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to be able to build what I want to build. And I know what I want to build. And I think that was probably one of the enticing things to him as well, that that made him want to.
Now, I'm not sure if you can talk about this, but you had mentioned that Full Bay, one of their main investment firms, has a bit of a recipe. So they find bootstrapped niche software firms that are looking to grow. They'll invest in that. And one of their ways of pouring fire onto that growth is to find a compatible marketing firm. And so I think that also set you up for success. And they've done that in multiple industry niches.
Yeah, so that's the kind of other part of why the acquisition has gone so well. The investor Mainsail, they're just I think really great non-traditional investors. They're good people, and they are very knowledgeable in the industry and actually provide help, not common on boards a lot of the time. And so their model is to fund bootstrapped software companies, right? With the idea that, you have learned how to build a profitable company from day one and not have all this debt. If you're then given a bunch of money, you know how to use it wisely. You're not going to go foolishly spending money and dumping it all down the drain. And then, the pairing it with marketing companies has worked well for them in the past when they can find, a marketing company that fits the bill. So worked out, lots of things aligned really well.
Wow. So that's super cool, really incredible. And I know that there are different ways to value a company. There's multiples times sales, or EBITDA, which is, I put a note, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization.
I know that.
And it's probably pretty tough to do some of that if you're such a young company.
Yeah.
But so a lot of what you did is just based on the trajectory and how quickly you're adding new clients. And
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of outside research that just, I mean, it's a $12 billion a year industry that, we probably captured less than 1% of the market. There's a lot of room for growth. And the trajectory that we've had is great. We have a track record and a plan to keep going that way. We have been going that way. The whole valuation process is, luckily that's more on their end, and then you get to decide whether that's a fair valuation or not. And our process was, we've called it publicly an acquisition, and it's kind of an acquisition merger where we've kept the brands separate so that Dieselmatic can still service other customers who use other shop management software, but it's a crazy process.
And this is a U.S.-based company. I think they're in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so they don't really know what Canadian dollars are, I imagine. Yeah. So that's a good thing. Yeah. So, because everybody maybe imagines a number, and then maybe it'll happen, and it sounds like that number was exceeded, and then you're happy. So,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Knowing that your investors and new boss are probably going to watch this video, so watch what you're saying.
On a beach. No, I think really, I mean, I've thought a lot about that, and I think it's still solving problems, right? I mean, I think whether Dieselmatic is still Dieselmatic in 5 years, or whether we transition and becomes a part of Full Bay and a service provided within. I'll definitely I'll still be solving problems. I think it'll maybe just transition to different roles. I have a hard time with needing to have a 5-year or 10-year plan and goal. I think that things change too quickly, right? Part of the reason why I don't have any tattoos. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago, and
You're
probably
not going to get a
won't
diesel
be.
truck up in the neck or anything?
I'm not gonna get a diesel truck.
Cool. Well, I have asked a bunch of questions, and I'm sure the group has many, many more. I think it's a really an amazing story. Chilliwack, not born, but bred, and been able to carve out something, working remotely, building a team of 15, which will probably be 25 in the next few months, and just really going at it. So congratulations on all your success, and let's open it up to some questions. I think there's a mic roaming around here.
Try that. All right. Well, Nick, great talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the first question, and if anybody else has one, please just alert me. My question is, you put a lot of time and effort into Very Good Creative Company. That was your first baby. How difficult was it to give up that baby for the new one? Because you don't know what you know now at the time.
Yeah.
How did that transition
was
go?
it? Not too hard. I mean, I think that with the foundations and the goals that I had, I knew that I wanted to build something that, that could have an impact on an industry. And I knew that Very Good Creative wasn't going to be that. I knew that it was a lot of fun. I know that, I really enjoyed the work that I did. But being able to build a company was just it was a big goal of mine, and it still is, to build an even bigger company. And so knowing that I had, by the time I, fully was done with Very Good Creative, I knew that I had that in Dieselmatic, so it was a lot easier to kind of let it go. The one thing that I did really hate was that I didn't make it to the 5-year mark. And there was a statistic I remember when I started the company that 90% of small businesses don't make it to the 5-year mark. And at the time, I thought that was because they failed, right? And I guess technically Very Good Creative did fail, but I chose to let it fail, and I succeeded in something else. So it hurt me that it didn't quite make it to the 5-year mark, but yeah.
Great.
Do you see it really as completely separate, or was it a bit of a rebrand? Or I know you, like in many ways, you just pivoted your target, and
yeah. The service offering was the same,
right?
Like I just packaged it into a productized service model.
Did you have to let clients go or find them a new provider?
Yeah, eventually. I kept servicing the ones that I liked, and the relationships that I enjoyed and enjoyed working with, and then eventually, once Dieselmatic grew to a point of needing just more and more of my attention and time, that it wasn't really feasible to charge what I would have needed to charge in order to justify it, then slowly ended those relationships. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Nick. It was great to hear your story and your passion as you go through the process over the last many years.
Yeah.
But you talked, and something that we hear often in entrepreneurs is, oh, I got really lucky meeting this person, or, I had this opportunity that maybe other people haven't had. But how much of that opportunity did you create yourself? So by going out and actually making the effort to meet those people or to create that luck for you, because I get that. But
Oprah Winfrey, luck is when, oh man, I know this quote very well, and I say it all the time. Preparation and opportunity meet. Ross from Lobster Marketing was one of probably 10 or 15 main sale portfolio company CEOs that I messaged. Probably ended up talking with 3 or 4 of them, and he was the one that was, the best. So, I mean, luck, the luck is the, I don't want to say it like this because it just will come off conceited, but it's the humble way of saying that, all of the hard work, if you keep working hard, eventually opportunity will come, and that's when it turns into luck.
You do have a confidence that is striking. Like, did you ever along this journey have the typical imposter syndrome of like,
Constantly. Yeah. I mean, that's everybody does, right? I mean, it is like I the other day, the other week, we got to a point on the team where I had to change my settings in Zoom to be able to fit everyone on the screen. And it kind of was, I kind of got like, okay, I'm talking to a bunch of people now, and they're all like, I'm the leader, they're listening to me. And I was like, oh, whoa, this is a lot. But yeah, I mean, I've had, again, lucky meeting good people. John Warren, who was the director of design for Vans, he was the director of design at Herschel when I worked there. And, he gave me the great advice that throughout your career, if you continue putting yourself in more stressful situations and taking on more, you will be able to handle more. He said, if I was in charge of everything that I'm in charge of today when I was your age, I would die. I would not be able to do it, and I would be fired tomorrow. And so those things, I mean, imposter syndrome is 100%, everyone has it, no matter what anyone says. And you just have to keep kind of fighting through it. And as you go through entrepreneurship, the cheesy sayings just become more and more true, that you have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in your vision.
Tony, or sorry, Nate?
Thanks, Nick. This is a great story so far. I had a question about the early stage of Dieselmatic. When you were acquiring your first 4 or 5 paying customers, what was that process like? You mentioned you hired a salesperson. Were you guys doing cold emails? Were you running into people at events?
Man, we got lucky. Facebook ads. Our market just happens to be one of the few markets that still use Facebook. So they are all a very similar person. And that person just ends up being somebody who uses Facebook a lot. Not to mention, at the time, this was pre iOS 14, so much better targeting. We really had a really good return on ad spend for a while there. I think our cost per acquisition for new customers was like $500. I think we even had a period of like 3 or 4 months when it was like 200 or 300, and our average customer value, annually was 20 or 30,000. So it's a pretty good return on the ad spend. So we got really lucky in having having that channel. One thing that I always thought was really dumb was when marketing companies boasted about how they had all this growth and they never did any marketing. Why not? You're a marketing company. Like, prove that you're good at what you do by, showing yourself to your prospects and your customers. And so that was a big one. I mean, those early days is when the risk aversion really comes into play, right? Like, prior to hiring my first employee, I probably had 30 grand in the savings account of the business, because I didn't want to hire somebody who, if they didn't work out, didn't sell, I would have to fire them right away because I couldn't afford them. And that gave me the ability to then to understand and realize that, salespeople are not also marketers. They expect leads coming in so that they can close those leads. And so I had money and a budget to be able to then invest into marketing. So yeah, having those early days of being risk averse, planning well, and testing is huge, right? Like, Facebook wasn't the only place that we advertised, but it happened to be the one that stuck and worked best. So I was very fortunate to have that happen. Had it not, maybe I wouldn't be here today. That's luck.
So my question was similar to that gentleman's about the marketing side of it, because pre-COVID, a lot of this would have been more trade shows and having a booth and doing that, like go find where these guys are and talk to them. So you mentioned iOS 14 changes, which more and more people are running into. Have you found that there's been a really big drop off since then, or have you been able to work around that?
Oh yeah, it seems like every week or month there's another notification that more audience groups are being removed, and it's a very interesting topic. I don't often click the do not track me button on my phone. I always allow it because it gives me better, more relevant things that I want to buy. If you don't, then they don't know. And we're diverging between utopia and dystopia there, but the targeting of our modern age is it's changing, right? It's getting harder. Our cost per acquisition for new customers has gone up because of that. It's also gone up because our budget is higher, right? And so, there's just more traffic coming through that's irrelevant. But it's, again, nice part about being so specific and so niche, you can stop the scroll, right? So when you're on your phone and you're scrolling and you get more and more bored and you scroll faster and faster, to stop the scroll, you need something that is directly relevant to you and interesting to you. For us, we can put out an ad that says, hey, shop owner, hey, diesel repair shop owner. And that is immediately something that they don't see often on their social media platforms. And they stop scrolling, take a look at it for a second. Maybe they click, maybe they don't. But it allows you to, have lower cost per clicks, higher click-through rates, overall spend goes down, and cost per acquisition for customers goes down as well.
Just a question on, you had mentioned process. And I'm just curious, how much of the development of process was your work versus bringing on like a person that was a talent in process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's say 30% my work, 70% Patty, who's our operations manager. So again, Ross from Lobster Marketing connected with their director of operations, a guy named Joe Allen, and he said one of the most beneficial things that they did early on was take the 2 or 3 people who had, all of the knowledge of how to do what they did, and just essentially interviewed them and extracted all of that information, and then created SOPs and documentations, and create a playbook. And so we went through that process of extracting that information from me, just me, and creating a bunch of documentation on how to do it. And that has been definitely one of the most fundamental parts.
So does that live on like an employee intranet or a wiki of some, or like?
It lives on a Google Drive file.
Okay.
Yeah. A Google Docs file. It's essentially a playbook that outlines our whole process and then links through to other documents. The very annoying thing that we just went through last week, we transferred our Google Workspace from our own into Fullbase, so that we're all connected. But with that, Google does not have a good system of transferring Google Workspaces. It is a nightmare. It breaks all of the links of the files. So this is a document with probably 100, 150 links that Patty has now had to go through and relink. But yeah, the early days of process and systems was really creating that playbook and SOPs that would then allow.
What's an SOP?
Standard operating procedure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so that allows you to hire more efficiently and onboard, ramp up employees to be able to produce effectively quicker. You don't have to spend personal one-on-one time training them as much because you have documentation that shows them how to do the job that they're expected to do. It's a balance too, because you don't want somebody just staring at a Google Doc all day, because that's boring.
I like to keep these to about an hour. We've got time for one more question. So it better be a good one.
Good one. All right. So, Nick, what are some of the niche markets that you investigated and eliminated in your search for diesel mechanic heaven?
Yeah. E-com was one that is, it's great, but it's crowded and it's cool. So lots of people do it, especially within the world that I was in of like ski and snowboard and skateboarding. It was just, it's too crowded. Brick and mortar retail as well. Again, just not the average customer value that makes sense for an agency. I looked into dentists. Again, very crowded. If you search dental marketing companies, 1 million will come up. If you search diesel repair marketing companies, 1 will come up. Actually, there's a couple, but we're the best. Going into some of those more professional services too, like looking at professional services as a whole. Again, crowded, tough to sell on a cold interaction because, they typically require some kind of relationship. Those are the ones that really come to mind. And the commercial repair industry came from looking into more generally construction, transportation, and heavy equipment, and kind of funneling down to there.
Awesome. Let's hear it for Nick.
Thank you, guys.